What's good, everyone? It's your boy Nati again with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone to all those who are returning, and welcome to all those who are new. So for today's video, I'll first be diving into some name ideas that have been thrown around on Twitter and elsewhere for Washington Redskins. And towards the second half of the video, I'll be diving into my take on the Cam Newton to the Patriots move and my opinion on how the Cam Newton New England Patriots pairing will work out this year and beyond. So without further ado, let's go.
Yeah, I know myself far too well to be a stranger of pain. Despite it all, we remain in the same. I'm just changing the game. Heart pure, never tainted with fame. Straight ahead, I'ma stay in my lane. Never switching courses, life's amazing. It's gorgeous.
So with the Redskins name ideas, right? Let me first start off by saying, I'm of course a diehard Redskins fan, and it's gonna hurt just going through this list and ultimately changing the name, but it's 2020. It is about time to change the name. So here we go. With my top 5 list, at number 5, I have the Americans, and I know what you guys are thinking. Like, that sounds kind of cringy. We're all Americans, and why call a sports team that? And it is pretty unique. But at the same time, I primarily like the name Americans because of the fact that the Cowboys always call themselves America's team, and that's been their moniker for years on end, and Jerry Jones has always called them that, and the media itself has always called it that. And I've always thought that the Redskins, or whatever team's in the nation's capital, has to be America's team because the fact that they are in the nation's capital, right? And I think having the name Americans would just be the icing on top and sort of solidify us as America's team, and at the same time would be throwing shade at the Dallas Cowboys, and who doesn't like throwing shade at the Dallas Cowboys, right? So I have them at my number 5 ranking, and then at number 4, the Red Tails. And upon first hearing this name, to be honest with you guys, I didn't really like it, like the sound of it. There's also been memes thrown around where it's been used in a sort of derogatory way towards people, and not towards Native Americans in particular, but just it's not maybe the best of terms and stuff. But at the same time, the Red Tails, like, out of all the 5 names that I'll be going through, it has the most impressive, the most powerful history. It's named after the Tuskegee Airmen, who were a group of African-American United States Army Air Force servicemen who served during World War II. So that history there is really powerful, and I think it's pretty fitting, in this time of social change, that we call ourselves the Red Tails. At the same time, I know people would say, it's pandering, and especially in this time, like it could be seen as pandering. But at the same time, the Red Tails, with that powerful history, with that great history, I think it could be a name for us. And JP Finley has talked about it being one of the top 2 options for the Redskins right now that they're reviewing and stuff. So we'll see. I will place it firmly at my number 4 spot in the rankings though. And then at number 3, I have the Warriors. And like I said in my last video, it's gonna take a while for me to get used to the Warriors if we call ourselves that. Largely because of the fact that we have the Golden State Warriors in basketball, and I think personally they ruined basketball, and I also mentioned earlier that I might discuss that in a future video, who knows. But I think I'm uncomfortable with the name, primarily because of the fact that with the Golden State Warriors winning 3 championships last decade and having global superstars on their team, I think we'll always be living in the Warriors, the Golden State Warriors shadow as a football team. And if you look up Warriors on Google, the first team that comes up will always be Golden State until we win multiple championships and we finally make ourselves a very reputable organization once again, going back to the glory years and stuff. So I had that problem with the Warriors name, but other than that, like, I like the alliteration, Washington Warriors, and the staying true to the Native American roots, but also Warriors, you can tie that into the military and, being proud of the military and everything that it does for us as a country. So I like the Warriors name. I just don't think it deserves a spot in my top 2, largely because of the fact that, you have the Golden State Warriors, and it's not really a unique name. And then at number 2, I have the Red Wolves, and I've started coming around the idea of calling ourselves the Red Wolves over the last couple of days, especially as it's gained steam with Redskins Today and Jordan, who mans the account, sort of making posts. And I've seen polls where Red Wolves has ranked number 1 in terms of what the fans want as the name and stuff. I like the Red Wolves also because of the fact that it kind of ties into the Native American roots once again, because of the fact that the wolf is very sacred to Native American culture. And also Red Wolves sounds a pretty awesome name because of the fact that, like, imagine having 70, 80,000 people in a stadium after a touchdown, after a win, going, oh, like, it would be kind of cringy, but at the same time, it would be kind of fun if you were in the stadium participating in it. So I like the Red Wolves, and again, we get to keep the HTTR, and I think we could also keep the burgundy and gold color scheme, those are the two things that I'm like looking for in these names, and the two things that I factor in the most when considering these names. So I like the Red Wolves, but I'll place that at my number 2, because at number 1, I have the Redspears, and there's even a Twitter account like Washington Redspears that someone created, and pretty much has a bunch of logo like designs, jersey designs, and it's really cool. And I like the Redspears largely due to the fact that like we already have the spear and the R, right, the letter R logo, right? So it wouldn't be too difficult of a transition if we were to ultimately name ourselves the Redspears. Also, we get to keep the HTTR hashtag that we all know and love, and it ties back into the Native American roots, right? Like, it's not something like Americans, or it's not something like Renegades, which could kind of push us away from the Native American heritage. And I get that, like, in today's climate, it is kind of difficult to affiliate yourself with Native American heritage without offending some sector of people. But I think Redspears is pretty cool, and it doesn't really tie into the color of Native American skin or something derogatory that we sort of heard come up with the Redskins name and stuff. So I put Redspears at my number 1 spot, but let me know what you guys think in the comments about these name suggestions, and if you have any better name suggestions for our team. And now with the reaction, my take to the Cam Newton to the Patriots move, man, the Patriots won't just go away, right? Like, after losing one franchise quarterback, one face of the franchise, albeit at a much older age, at the age of 43, they end up getting possibly another one in Cam Newton, and possibly another one at a much younger age at 31, who is a former MVP, who's a player that took his team to the Super Bowl in 2015. And on top of that, like, they got him for very cheap. Like, I saw a graphic being posted on Twitter a couple days ago where someone mentioned Chase Daniel, who will now become the third string quarterback right after Nick Foles got traded to the Bears. Chase Daniel making more than both Cam Newton and Jameis Winston. And I know Jameis Winston 30 picks, but he also had the most passing yards in the league, right, last year. So that just pretty much tells you like how good of a steal like the Patriots got in Cam Newton. And I get it. Cam's been injured in the past. He's been injured in the last couple of years. He's been pretty ineffective on the field, but he's still, in my opinion, above average quarterback who, once again, is a former MVP, took his team to the Super Bowl. So he's shown that he has that potential. He's shown that he has that playmaking ability that a lot of teams need at the quarterback position. And you don't really have to go that far back to see him being a very effective quarterback and showing some effective quarterback play on the field. If you go back to the 2018 season, this guy had 3,400 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, 13 picks. Those numbers might not be the most eye-popping, but those are winnable quarterback numbers. Like, those are numbers that you can win with in the NFL. And he also completed 68% of his passes, which is kind of unthinkable for Cam Newton, because career-wise, he's known as someone who doesn't complete a lot of his passes. In fact, his average completion percentage, like, for his entire career, is less than 60%. So, I mean, he's shown that he was pretty effective in 2018, and that was only 2 years ago. So maybe with the help of Bill Belichick sort of revitalizing his career, could do wonders in New England. Who knows? Upon hearing the news, my biggest worry, though, was actually Cam's personality and his pretty sizable ego sort of meshing with Bill Belichick and his no-nonsense type of coaching, no-nonsense type of mentality. But then again, Bill Belichick has been able to deal with players like Cam Newton who've had sizable egos, pretty big personalities, one of them being Randy Moss, right? And Randy Moss had his best season in New England, actually, in 2007, when the Patriots obviously went undefeated in the regular season, only to fall short to the Giants in the Super Bowl. And on top of that, like, you can just go back to Carolina, right? Like, look at Carolina. Carolina had Ron Rivera as their head coach, right? And, I get that a lot of players appreciate Ron Rivera and love Ron Rivera, but at the same time, he was thought of as a no-nonsense type of coach, and still is. And Cam Newton and Ron Rivera were able to work well in Carolina for many, many years, and they ultimately went to the Super Bowl in 2015. Cam Newton won the MVP that year. We saw that relationship really really work in Carolina, even with the no-nonsense type of mentality that Ron Rivera oftentimes keeps as a coach. And even today, Cam Newton admires Ron Rivera and admires all the work that he did in Carolina, and still loves him as a coach, even with him obviously no longer being his coach. So I think that won't be as much of an issue as I thought initially after hearing about the move. So, and there's also been talk about Cam Newton potentially being in a quarterback battle with Jarrett Stidham and not being able to solidify his quarterback one spot on the roster right away, having to fight for it. I don't really buy into that nonsense. I think Cam Newton will start come week 1. I get it. Jarrett Stidham has some potential as a quarterback out of Auburn in his second year, and he did play behind Tom Brady last year and got to see greatness on the field for a good part of the season and stuff, even with Tom Brady kind of declining a little bit, as we all saw in New England. But with the short off season, I think, as I mentioned in my other videos involving the Redskins and stuff, I think with the short off season, it really puts veteran players who've played in the NFL for a long period of time, who really know the playbook well, at an advantage over younger, inexperienced players who are just getting into the swing of things, and even non-rookies who, while yes, they got a year under their belt, they don't have too much NFL experience. So I think Cam Newton will ultimately win the job right away and be that starting quarterback for New England come week 1. And then another question that a lot of people have talked about that I find pretty interesting is whether Cam Newton in New England or Tom Brady in Tampa Bay will be more successful. And at this point, in early July, I think Tom Brady in Tampa Bay will just be more successful, even at the older age of 43 that Tom Brady is at right now. Largely because I think Tampa Bay has much better weapons on offense, especially they have a stacked receiving core, headed by obviously Mike Evans, right, at the wide receiver 1 position, and Chris Godwin, who make up arguably the best wide receiving duo in the entire National Football League. On top of that, they also have a really stacked tight end group in Rob Gronkowski manning the tight end 1 position. And I get it, Gronk is not the same player he used to be, but at the same time, he still could provide steady tight end play. And honestly, you wouldn't need to provide any more than that when you have guys like OJ Howard and Cameron Brate backing him up. They also have Ronald Jones II at the running back position, and Ronald Jones as a rookie, I and many others thought he was simply a bust. He was just terrible his rookie year, but last year he really came on, and I see him as being a pretty good piece on that offense this year. They also drafted Keyshawn Vaughn in the 3rd round, who a lot of people pegged as a steal in the draft, and I think he showed a lot of potential in college, and I think he will only be a really good player for Tampa Bay, especially with Tom Brady being the quarterback. So I think Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will be more successful this year, largely because of that great offensive supporting cast. They also have an improved offensive line. They drafted Tristan Wirfs, who's arguably the best offensive lineman in the draft at the number 13 pick. And their offensive line, while young and pretty inexperienced, is steadily improving and will provide Tom Brady the necessary protection that he needs, in my opinion. And they also have Coach Arians, right, who is not Coach Bill Belichick, right? Hasn't won any Super Bowls, but he has done wonders on many sorts of offenses around the league. He helped Big Ben in Pittsburgh. He also helped, obviously, Carson Palmer in Arizona, and he's known as a quarterback whisperer, and to have the GOAT on your roster as your quarterback 1, I think it will only do wonders for Tom Brady, even at his advanced age, and I think that will just help Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense just excel really this upcoming season. Something that's not really mentioned by a lot of people, but I will mention on this channel, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a very underrated defense. They're not top 10 or top 5 or anything like that, but they're pretty stout. And I think they have a lot of young players on that defense that will only continue to ascend. One of them being Devin White, who they drafted very early a couple of drafts ago. And I think the defense has just really come along, especially with Todd Bowles being the defensive coordinator. And Todd Bowles might not be the greatest of head coaches, but he's a really solid defensive coordinator. And they did really well last year on defense. And I think with that stout defense and with the really good offense that I envision seeing out of Tampa Bay this year, I think the Buccaneers could be a really good team and at least compete for a playoff spot, honestly, this year. And to top things off, the Patriots actually have a much harder schedule. They have to play the Chiefs, the Seahawks, the 49ers, and some other much improved teams. So records-wise, once again, I see the Bucs as potentially being 10-6 and at least getting a playoff spot, but I think they'll really make some noise in the playoffs this year and may even be a Super Bowl contender. Who knows? Meanwhile, I think the Patriots with Cam Newton, I think they could squeak into the playoffs at 9-7 and maybe win a game or two in the playoffs, but I just don't see them winning the Super Bowl this year. I don't see them as having that potential to really win it all, like the Tampa Bay Bucks might have this year with Tom Brady being under center. So that's all I got for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. It's very appreciated. Thank you guys for interacting on Twitter as well. Make sure to follow at DMV Sports Zone once again. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. It would be much appreciated. And see you guys on the next one. Peace.
Looking at the bigger picture portrait and I smile wide. Performed a song and the crowd cried. How can I lie? I'm tearing up as I'm starting to stare in y'all eyes. I know that you going through the last month. You're stressing as you hitting